Hey guys, I wanted to show you a little bit about this app that I have started using, and give you a bit of a walk through it and show you some of the features. Um, this can be helpful for some of you. You may decide that it's not for you, and obviously that's okay. But I wanted to tell you guys about it just in case you think that it might be super helpful for you. Um, Here's kind of the backstory about it, and that is that block scheduling just has never really worked for me. And um, despite my best intentions, I will like block off the time and say this time is for, only client admin, and here's how much time I need, and it just never really goes the way that I think it's going to go. Whether there's sudden fires that need to be put out, and so maybe one day I need to spend an extra hour or 2 hours on a certain task, or um, maybe a meeting would get scheduled and it just never really works out the way that I think it's supposed to. So I kept seeing ads for actually the last couple of years for this app called Motion, and thought it was kind of an interesting idea, but just sort of kept it in the back of my head. And then finally, over the holidays, I thought, well, I'm going to spend a little bit of time and try this thing out. So I did. And the basic idea is that it integrates with your calendar, and you add your tasks, and it will schedule your tasks for you around the parameters that you set so that you can focus on the right tasks in the right priority without actually having to make any of those decisions. So for me, it has freed my brain from spending energy worrying about how should I use my time, and do I have more work than I have capacity? Or can my work fit into the available time that I have? I kind of didn't realize how much energy I was spending deciding what work to do next, choosing priorities for my work, and then trying to get through all of the sort of urgent tasks as fast as I could, because I never really knew if I had enough time left over for the important but not urgent work. Um, and, I think that prioritizing the important but not urgent work is really important. But if the urgent work doesn't get done, then that's a big problem too. So this has really helped me visualize all of that. And it's been a pretty big deal for me. So I'm going to kind of show you a little bit about it. So like I said, you integrate it with your calendar. You can choose what calendars you integrate it with. So I just have it integrated with my like business calendar. And I don't have it integrated with my personal calendar that I share with my family. So, there's still a little bit of like, sometimes I have to duplicate tasks, but that's okay because I don't want it to necessarily block off tasks that my husband adds to the calendar where he's busy, because that's not necessarily times when I'm busy. Um, but so you can see these items in blue, those are actual meetings that I have on the calendar. And so then it schedules my tasks, which are the ones in gray, around when I actually have my meetings. Um, so I've told it when my schedule is. So I've given it the basic parameters. It has some kind of already set in there: day, nighttime, then 24/7. But basically, I'm pretty much always just sort of working with this sort of work schedule. And this I've decided through some kind of trial and error, this is kind of like my basic ideal work schedule. Eventually, I'd kind of like to push that 9:30 to 10. Um, Maybe eventually I'll push some of these 4:30s back to 4, but for now, this is what it is. And you can always change this, and it would update your tasks accordingly. So whenever I add a task, it's going, and I tell it to schedule something within those work hours, then that's the sort of basic parameter that it's working with. And then after that, it will, like I said, only schedule around when the meetings are. So, oh, and you can have multiple schedules. So um, if you have kind of different schedules that you're working with, maybe you have like a separate weekend schedule. When you come in and add a task, you can tell it what schedule you're working with, and that's when it'll schedule it. So let's say that I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a new task. So this coming week, I have a VIP day, and I'm going to need to do some follow-up work after that. So I want to make sure that I am accounting for the time that I'm going to need to use for that. So show you kind of some of your options that you have here. This isn't really a full task manager for most people, but you do have the option to create projects in here and then sort of attach them to a project. There are some limited notes you can add, just depending on whether or not you want to use those functions. But the basic idea is you tell it sort of what's the earliest day that you can start that. Well, I know that I'm not going to be able to start it until after my Dubsado build. And I know that I want to finish it within that week. So I can't start any earlier than the 25th, but I want to finish that before the end of the 27th. So my deadline is going to be 4:30 on the 27th. I'm going to schedule it within my work hours. It's not a recurring task. I'm going to say it's going to take me about 2 hours to do this. Now, when you choose a larger chunk of time, it gives you this option: allow to split into chunks, and then what's the minimum duration that it will split that task into. So let's say, sure, we could split this into 2 1-hour chunks. And then the priority. Is this something that needs to be done ASAP? Is this a hard deadline, a soft deadline, or doesn't really have a deadline? It's just kind of like a someday task. I'm going to tell myself that this is a hard deadline because this is my schedule that I'm using for this year. Is follow-up tasks get done that same week, and that's what it is. Okay, so I think I've got all of the details that I need, and so I'm going to click schedule, and you can see what it's going to do is everything that's already in here, it's going to reorder in order to fit this task into the existing parameters. And so there are tasks in here that may have different priorities. Maybe they technically don't need to be done until later. And so some of those things are going to kind of get shifted off until later. Now, this is the end of the month where there are a lot of things coming due. And so it may be that it's like, nope, you don't have time for that. So let's see. It'll actually tell you up here, it says all tasks are scheduled before the deadline. So that's good. That's telling me that everything is in. Okay, so here's my new task here. Follow up to Dubsado build. There's an hour here, and there's an hour here. And everything's getting done before my deadline because I've got that little green exclamation point. So let's say, for instance, I decide, well, actually, I would really rather that whole thing just get done in a chunk. And I don't really want to split this into 2 chunks. I just want to like sit down and do all of my follow-up work and be done with it. So if I wanted to do that, I could come in here and I could remove that option. So now I have to do it in a 2-hour chunk and save. And then you can see how it's going to recalculate everything and then reschedule all of my tasks. Now see, that changes. Now one of my tasks needs to be done after. So it's telling me that now it has trouble fitting this into my schedule with all of my other priorities. But it can do it the day after on Friday the 28th. So I have the option to say, is Friday the 28th still within the, does that still work? Or am I going to need to rethink things? And I could say, okay, sure. Well, I can do that on Friday instead of on Thursday. That's fine. And now I have that whole chunk scheduled here. Recurring tasks, I think, are really interesting because they really work kind of like my brain tends to work in terms of how to set priorities. So you can see, like, I've got some client recurring tasks, and I even have like make lunch as a recurring task because I was like not setting aside time. It was just going like task, task to task. And I was like, well, I really would like to sort of have lunch. But for me, I don't necessarily care all that much when I eat lunch. I know that I want to eat lunch every day. Takes me about 20 minutes. And there is an ideal start time of about 12:30. But really, if I eat anytime between 11:30 and 2, then that's fine. As a priority, I can choose that this is a must finish or a try to finish. So on a recurring task, maybe it's something I have to do every single day. Maybe it's something I try to do every single day. For instance, like exercising, I don't have exercising as part of this because that's something I try to do before my workday starts, before that 9:30 a.m. But if you wanted to include that in part of your work and it was like, well, I'm going to try to get that done every day, then you could select try to finish. So, or is it something that just needs to happen anytime during the week? You could select once a week on any of these days. So that works really well for me and how my brain sort of decides what's priority and what's not priority. And so I really like that option for recurring tasks. So we didn't make any changes there, I don't think. And then so just to kind of show you guys some of the other options here. So when you have an ASAP priority, it's just automatically going to schedule it as soon as possible, obviously. On a soft deadline, it'll try to schedule it before your deadline, but if it has to, it'll push it off a little bit. And then with no deadline, I like this a lot too. It's sort of try to do within 1 week, 2 or 3 weeks, 1 to 2 months, or 3 to 6 months. And so that's really great for those kind of not priority, but someday tasks that you don't want to forget, but aren't necessarily urgent things that have to get done right then. So I really like all of those different options. I've played around a lot to try to get the best settings for me. For example, they have this option called focus time, and I thought, oh, that's really great. I want to make sure that I get focus time on Thursdays and Fridays, and I really want like this big, like I want 6 hours where really I'm focusing on creating content, and so I tried using this focus time option to set that up. And what I found was that I was always having tasks that were taking over my focus time, and I was never actually having any of that focus time left. So for me, I decided that the better option was, instead of using this focus time, was actually just to schedule. So for instance, you can see writing. Right now I'm not writing, but I am creating content. And so I decided that I just needed to schedule this as a type of recurring task where I really want to spend like 6 hours I can split it into chunks, but I need like a big 2 hour chunk where I can really kind of dig in. And then, on these can be either Thursday or Friday, et cetera, et cetera. So I set those kind of parameters. And I've played around with it in the few weeks that I have been using it so I can try to find kind of what options work best for me. There are a lot of other features that it has. There is, for instance, a scheduler, um, which I'm not going to dig into too much, but you can, let's see. So you can choose what schedule. So you can choose like anything within your existing sort of work hours. You can give it a separate custom schedule. For instance, I've decided this year I'm not going to meet on Thursdays anymore. Um, and then all these kinds of different usual sort of scheduling things that we have become accustomed to seeing. But one of the things that it does that I really do like is that it will show you your preferred time. So you can, in your settings, you can tell it that you want to either have your meetings spread far apart. Maybe if you just really get drained by meetings, then you don't want to have them close together. Or if you want to just like get them all out of the way at one time, then it will try to schedule your meetings all together. And so you can kind of give it your preferences. And when it sends out the scheduler to people, you can either tell it like, tell the person who's booking, this is a preferred time, but you can book other times, or you can even set it so that it will only allow bookings during your preferred times. And so those are pretty nice features, but it does have some limitations. For instance, like I couldn't use this for my VIP days because it doesn't even give me the option of scheduling a 4 hour meeting. I think it goes up to 2 hours and that's the maximum. So I couldn't even use it for that if I wanted to. So, that has some pros and cons there. And then there are some features in here that I am fascinated by, but haven't really even gotten to test out, like this flexible meetings. So if you have a team where you're constantly trying to find the best time for everybody to meet, you can set up this flexible meeting option. And if everybody has their calendar in there, then the system will automatically find the best meeting time for everybody and schedule it. And I think that that's pretty incredible. So you theoretically, again, I haven't gotten to test it out, but you wouldn't have to send out emails or doodle polls saying, when's everybody available? And if I had had this a few months ago, I definitely would have tried to use it in that, but haven't gotten to use that. So if you do use that, let me know how that works for you because I am definitely fascinated and interested to know how that works. I will say too, so this is not a perfect app. It's not a perfect software. There are limitations and pros and cons to it. And I want to be really upfront about that because this is not sort of this is the most amazing thing and you should buy it. That's not where I'm coming from. So these are things that they may or may not be deal breakers for you. They were not deal breakers for me. I did decide to go ahead and purchase the software for the year. And so I'll keep you guys posted on how it's going. But it can't replace, for me, it can't replace a collaborative project management tool. So I use ClickUp. I do a lot of kind of more expansive kind of project management and communicating with clients where I want to like keep attachments and documents together and conversations and you can't really, as far as I've found anyway, you can't really do that in here. So you can have notes for a task, but you can't attach anything to it. You can't comment back and forth about it, at least not as far as I've seen. But I don't have a team in here, so it's possible maybe those functions would be opened up if I did have a teammate in the system. So it can't replace ClickUp for me, or, if I were using Trello or Asana, I don't think it would replace those either. It also doesn't integrate with ClickUp. So I can't go in and add a task to ClickUp and have it automatically pull in here. So I do have to recreate the tasks that I want in here. I have to recreate them in Motion after they already exist in ClickUp. And in some cases, this is okay because there are, for instance, in ClickUp, maybe I'll have a separate task for a lot of sort of little tasks that make up a big project. And really all I want to do in here is just kind of capture, like, the whole project is supposed to take 6 hours or 8 hours or whatever it is. So I don't necessarily need to put every individual task in here, but I need to account for the larger chunk of time that that takes. So in some cases, I think that's okay that I'm recreating tasks, and that's why that doesn't really bother me all that much. In some ways, it would be nice if it integrated, but not a deal breaker for me. One thing that is super annoying to me is that it only schedules 2 weeks in advance. So I can't necessarily look at my whole month. I can't come in at the beginning of the month and put in all my tasks for the month and just sort of see where I am, and how much time I have for the whole month. It would be really, really nice. I've actually already contacted them to request that feature, because that's, I think, a very missed opportunity, in my opinion. I also do wish that it would update tasks. So when you have these tasks that are available in chunks, it would be super great if you checked off a chunk. When you check off a task, it will ask you, so I can show you, it'll say, like, do you want to mark the whole task complete or just this chunk complete? And it would be really nice if, when you marked this chunk complete, if it would update the task to show you how much time was remaining, or how many chunks you'd marked off or something like that. And it doesn't do that. That's, again, a feature that I'm going to request, because I think that that is a missed opportunity. So those are just some of the limitations. Again, for me, I decided ultimately that it was worth it, because visualizing how my time and task management comes together was valuable enough that I was willing to kind of work with some of those limitations. It really has been great for me as somebody who, is always trying to make time management a little bit easier, always trying to find a better way to work with time management, or just kind of always struggles with time management. I have really actually found this to be very helpful. I think I didn't realize, and I may have said this at the beginning, how much energy I spent on deciding what work to do and when to do it. And when I realized that I could not think about that, I didn't have to spend energy thinking about that, it was a little bit of a sort of lightning moment where I just thought, this is amazing. And the energy that I felt from realizing I didn't have to drain myself thinking about that was really huge.